Hi, welcome to the first episode of Artspresso. My name is Z, and you can find me on DeviantArt as Nimphradora, an account I share with my partner Valentina. Artspresso is a show where if you're a visual artist looking for ways to improve your art, you can send us your work, and we'll use it to demonstrate one small piece of fundamental art theory per episode. Art theory or principle is different from an individual critique or paint over of just one particular piece of art, because a principle can be applied to many pieces of art or potentially all of your art because they're universal. And principles can be developed and your understanding of them can be deepened over time so that you gain more and more improvements from them because they're also timeless. And once you pick up more than one piece of principles and they start interacting, you can gain improvements in ways that you didn't think were possible because they're also synergistic. So those are the benefits of learning art principles, and we will try to show them in a way that makes them easily digestible, so you can pick up something that maybe you haven't known before in a matter of half an hour or so and begin to see a difference right away. And we'll show you the exercises that help you understand that particular principle with each episode so that you could maybe build up an exercise regime over time that gives you more and more results. So that is the goal, and let us get to it. This week's submission is from Edward Spire, who is trying to become a freelance artist and help people bring their D&D characters to life. And his drawing is a portrait of a orc character. And the principle this week that I will try to demonstrate is action line and harmony. Let's take a look at the master of action lines, a Ryan Woodward. Now, as you can see in his drawings, especially in the first two, you can use just one or two very simple continuous lines that runs through most, if not all, of your character or subject, and they capture the main posture, the action or the energy that your subject is expressing. In the example of the human body, you want to look for features that visually line up. So an arm into the torso, into the leg, or the spine into the lower back, into the neck, for example. You want to get these lines very simple and flowing and try to line them up with as many features as you can see so that we can use very few lines to express the form, the posture. And you want to exaggerate what these lines are expressing by having them extend outside the body. And if there's a curvature, exaggerate that curvature a bit, or angles. Basically, you want to push the energy. You want to make it a bit cartoony, because this will make your character seem a bit more alive and dynamic, so that later when you start adding detail and polish, it doesn't start to look dull. And having the lines extend outside the character or the visible form will be very helpful later on if we have extra things like clothing or accessories or items that the characters are having on them. We can use these action lines to help also align and tie up other features so that it brings an extra sense of unity to your drawing, because there's things that are related by these invisible lines of force that go through your whole drawing. So that is the idea behind using action lines to create harmony, but we were only looking at human figures. So how does that apply to portraits? Well, let's take a look. Actually, it doesn't really matter what it is we're drawing, because we just have to look at what are some of the most visible features. In this case, probably, the cheekbone in the front, the jawline, the top of the head, and the neck. So we want to just use similarly long, extended lines that are flowing and simple, and go through as many important features on the character as possible to be our action lines, to express the basic form, proportion, and energy of our drawing. And in this case, because we're having a perspective of looking up at the character. I just want to do a bit of perspective grids to make sure I'm on the right track in terms of having the right angle. And perspective is extremely important subject, but it is maybe a bit too much to fit into this first video as well. So we'll do some other videos about perspective later on. Now, having drawn the most important and fundamental action lines of this drawing, now we'll start to go a little bit smaller and try to fit the features of this character into this kind of grid or guide we have. So the idea is all these action lines we've drawn have similar qualities. They're similarly curved or similarly straight, so that if we just make sure that whatever it is we're drawing, whether it's the lips or the chin or the eyebrows, that we make them coincide with where these lines happen to be, or if they're not on the same position, we can have them at least following the same kind of angle or curvature. Then later, once we've removed these guidelines, the drawing will still have this kind of harmony to it, simply because all the features that we've drawn were kind of trying to follow along with the action lines. So now it's just a matter of redrawing this portrait using these guides that we have established and replacing the extremely simple lines with slightly more recognizable features. And harmony just means if your lines all have a similar quality to them. Now, you don't actually want to have 100% harmony in the drawing, because if every single line in the whole drawing have the exact same kind of curvature or straightness or jaggedness or whatever quality it is, then it will tend to look a little bit boring just because there's no contrast between them. So we'll also have some lines, maybe less than half of the lines, you would want to have some difference to them. Maybe they're angular or they're tightly curved rather than gently curved like our action lines are. So as you can see, the fact that we have a portrait that has eyeballs and nostrils and things like that kind of naturally lends to this, because those features, you can't really have a ball using just gentle curves. So in this case, we just have to make sure that whenever we have an opportunity, like on this lip, that we have the line coincide with the action line. And pay attention a little bit to the perspective, simply because realism is kind of part of the goal here with this character. So we do want it to look a bit solid, like it exists or could exist in 3D space. And I'm replacing these cheeks a little bit. They were really round before, but I noticed that because we have perfectly round eyeballs and a nose, if we also have round cheeks, then you have all these round things right next to each other, and it's a little bit less interesting than I like. So it's not necessarily wrong to have that. It's just, since I'm doing the critique, and that's my personal taste. And now I'm drawing the hat. Basically do the same thing, trying to make it look solid in terms of perspective, and in this case, not it landing exactly on an action line, but just going parallel to it, which lends enough harmony as it is. And of course, since this is a character that's already designed in someone's head, we don't want to go too far off. So I am also trying to keep the characteristics of the parts, like this lip or this smile, pretty close to what the original design was trying to be. And I might suggest adding these little tusks just because we have an orc character, and as far as I know, if you're an orc or half orc in D&D, you will have some kind of tusk, especially the male orcs. I don't know if females have them, but I think it's legit to have that. So I'm adding it in there. Also, it makes it look a little bit more interesting. And here also, I'm just kind of turning the ear forward a bit to have it look more, I think, anatomically accurate. And the hair can be a little bit tricky just because there's a tendency for people to draw individual strands of hair right from the beginning. And this kind of is a bad habit if you are not aware enough of the big shape the hair is creating, like the tufts of hair. So what I try to do is try to use fairly simple lines to kind of mark out the outlines of the hair, so that I can see that this whole bunch of hair is making an interesting enough shape as a unit, and then I can break up the silhouette of it. And some of this other small details is less important now that we fit them so closely to the action lines, simply because we've already done that with most of the big features. So now it's okay to go in there and have some smaller details that are just, just expressing detail and not necessarily having to also follow the action lines. I would say it's a good formula if you want to do some kind of concept art or illustration, fantasy art, which is usually what I do, to have maybe 2/3 of your drawing be harmonious, be on action line, and maybe 1/3 can be contrasting. Okay, and at this point is pretty much done. Yeah, I'm not trying to make this the greatest drawing ever. I don't think we should get too ambitious with our improvements. It's a really good thing if you can pick up a principle and apply it in a way that you can improve all of your drawings just a little bit. And you do the daily exercise, which we will show in a bit, and you learn additional principles along the way, and you just let it all add up slowly over time, and you'll see a big difference. Okay, now that's it for the draw over. Let's move on to the exercise in the next video.